welcome. Nice to be here. Nice to have you here. This is what we call free lectures, and the purpose of this is to provide you some information. And as I'm noticing, there's quite a few new people on this call, so welcome. There's a whole bunch of you that have been here before. Welcome. So I'm going to approach this a little bit differently today, and one of the things that I want to do is start at a place that begins to explain a number of things. So for many of you who are either in this body of work or participating and been here around for a long time, you may have heard a number of these pieces, and this set of exercises will do. You have definitely done before. So for the most part, this is directed at people who are interested in beginning to have a sense of something. And I'll kind of speak to that in a minute. But let me ask a question that's very fundamental to what we're going to talk about today. So you see that there is a lecture, a talk, a class, a session that's being given. And for somehow, some way, you managed to find your way to this call. And in real terms, even many of you that are very immersed in this work, you don't have any idea who I am. You've never physically met me for the most part. You listen to what I say, but how do you know that I am not making all this up? How do you know that I'm not a really good storyteller? I am a really good storyteller. But how do you know that what I'm telling you is your truth? You know, what mechanism do you use? How do you even ask your question? Why should I believe this person who is providing the information? Now, why do you ask that question of many of the things that you experience in your life? One of the things I'm going to tell you is we are in a huge transition from a place that we have been to a place that we're going, and that transition is full of lots of very interesting and very not so interesting events that are about to present themselves right in front of you. But how do you know what I'm telling you is your truth? Now, I'm going to set it up by saying it's my truth. But then a lot of times you've met people in your life and it was their truth, what they were telling you. And if you just give me $10 because I figured out how to walk through this wall, I'm going to give you a manual and I'm going to tell you how to walk through the wall too, because I've done it lots of times. It's really pretty easy. Just send me your $10 and everything will be cool. Now, if you believe me there, you're in trouble to start with. But how do you know? What is it about you that is able to observe and then choose as to engage or not engage in whatever's in front of you? How do you know? One of the things that I know about pretty much everybody is inside you, part of your consciousness, part of your awareness, part of you as a spiritual being functioning in a body, mostly very unconsciously functioning in a body, but functioning in a body, there is an internal guidance system that works flawlessly. But do you listen to it? And the answer is mostly no, you don't listen to it. And it's actually not that you don't listen to it, is it giving me my truth or not my truth? It's actually not paid attention to consciously, pretty much. Now, if you think back when you were younger, there were times when you were figuring it out like a teenager or really a young person in your early years. And there was an aspect of you that explored, that was curious, that kind of wanted to know how things worked. And you would get around other people, and other people would have maybe more information than you would have. And in some cases, you would just believe them and go along for the experience. In other cases, when something popped up that was off, that wasn't really aligned. There was a little feeling, and kind of the little feeling was a little voice that said, I don't think so. This doesn't feel right. You remember that space? See, that's that internal guidance system. There are other times where that internal guidance system allows you to, you are presented with something and there's this, yes, this is what I want to do. And that's that internal guidance system also, basically saying very aligned with you and who you are and what you're all about, and this is it. But that other side says often, I don't think so. And you've also had that proven to you, I'm going to bet, because we all have that opportunity to validate that internal guidance system. It's something where there was a point in time, if you think back, where that little voice said, I don't think so. And you were really clear in two ways. The first way you were really clear is, I'm not going to do this. And everybody else ran out and did it in a very short period of time. It was pretty clear that wasn't the right thing to do. And so you had validation. You had a success. There is another side of it where it said, I don't think so. And you said, no, it's going to be okay. And within a short period of time, it really wasn't okay. And so again, you had validation. Anybody know what I'm talking about? That space. How often do you go to that space? How often do you allow what's being presented to you to be assessed by that space, that little voice? As we get older and we make a set of decisions that go something like, I want to fit in, I want to be liked, I want to do the right thing, I want to be cool, I want to buy the right clothes, I want to get the right job, I want to go to the right school, I want to externally do what everybody else is doing, or I want to get ahead. That little voice very often gets left behind. It just gets overrun by the external right, wrong, good, bads. But as you begin to explore this transition where we're starting to play, having a sense of finding that little voice again is going to be really, really, really valuable to you. Because if what you are all about is beginning to find your truth for you, see, and I'm going to give you lots of information, and I'm going to be very clear about making this something that I'm very clear is as accurate as possible, is kind of how something works. But for the most part, what I'm going to give you is a piece of information, and then I'm going to say, is this your truth? Does this work for you? Try this on. How did it work? Try on this vibration called capable, called gracious, and what does it feel like? It should be a feeling. What does it feel like? And see, at that point, it's not me giving you a truth. It's you discerning a truth. And in order to discern that truth, that internal guidance system is always engaged. And it will tell you quietly, and sometimes not so quietly, that this is aligned or this isn't aligned. Now, does that make sense? Now, I said I'm going to start really at the beginning. So at the beginning, I am sitting here giving you information, and you have really very little idea of who I am. Very seldom does the question ever get asked, how do you know what you're telling me? Really wonderful question. How do you know this stuff? And I'm more than happy to give you references to that, but very, very seldom. Maybe once or twice a year, somebody asks that question. Don't you think that would be a good question to ask? How do you know that what you're telling me or pointing me in a direction is really true? Have you ever done that yourself? Have you seen it? You know? So, useful question to ask, not just of me, but as this transition unfolds, and it's about to get choppy in wonderful ways and choppy in not so wonderful ways, beginning to know yourself is going to be a very valuable skill set, or at least a sense of discerning that basically this feels right and this doesn't feel right. This has a sense of an awareness that says yes, this says no. Very simple, yes, no, yes, no. Very wonderful tool to begin to re-nurture. So where we're going to play today is I'm going to give you a good amount of information to consider. And most of the information is just to consider. It's really not a yes or no. It's really not a truth or not a truth exactly. It's something to consider, but from the standpoint of, is it something for you? Mostly what I'm going to tell you is a piece of information, and what I'm going to suggest to you to do is, rather than throw it out and go, that's a lot of BS, or yes, that's my answer and I'm going to send him my $10 because I know I'll walk through the wall. Not so much either one of those, but this space where really take it, hear it, kind of put it on the shelf, put it in that space that says, all right, I'm going to just pay attention to this. And as I begin to engage in what we're talking about and the exercise we're going to play in, just begin to notice, does this make any sense for you? So this session is entitled Bringing Heaven to Earth. I didn't put in the but it requires a human body. Now, one of the things that in my reality happens often, like all the time, which is really cool, is I have access to ask a question to a consciousness that we put names on. Kuthumi, Saint Germain, Metatron, Melchizedek, Yeshua, Jesus, Gabriel. They're all there. They're there for you also. They're always there. I've just figured out how to ask and kind of hear. And so one of the things that they have all said in different ways and very specifically is, as we look at what's unfolding in all that is, and particularly with the earth and all the three-dimensional, four, five-dimensional experiences that are being constructed, we can tell you the possibilities. We can tell you all the possibilities. And we can tell you the probabilities of those possibilities unfolding. We can see them all. We can really clearly have an awareness of them all. But we can't bring them into creation. We do not have a human body. We don't have a physical form with a consciousness that creates form within form, physical world, earth, existence that we're in. You have the capacity in form, in a body, sitting in a chair, looking out a window, in that form, you have the capacity to create more form. Archangelics, all the great beings, as they are in that vibrational configuration, do not have the capacity to create physical form because they're not in form. So, piece of information, set it on the side, just have it as a piece of information. So one of the things that is occurring is, for a very long period of time, many eons of time, after the fall of consciousness, a really fabulously amazing story with many, many aspects to it. It just wasn't some bad angel. That didn't even happen. That wanted wars. That didn't even happen. That created this whole circumstance. It didn't happen like that at all, but a story for another day. But there was a fall, and in that fall of consciousness, many aspects of you were disconnected. Like that mental and emotional body, we talk about those two bodies. Nah, they were never meant to be two bodies. They function as one body. a function as creating a thought and drawing an emotion that supports the thought. Happens as a single function of consciousness. But that had to be separated. The brain was very shut down because most of the parts of the brain, we'll touch on in a minute, are all about higher consciousness, functioning in a multidimensional consciousness. But we got kind of drawn down to the level of kind of an ant. You just only knew a very little bit, and today we still only know a little bit. But we know a lot more than we did at one point when we were at kind of the ant. So here you're at a place, though, that is absolutely remarkable, a place that has been dreamt about for many eons of time. It has been nurtured into existence. It has been assisted by the other realms of consciousness. Many things laid before our feet, and yet many times we didn't take advantage of them. And so it happened again and again and again, and all through that time, more and more consciousness began to be drawn into the body. Now, most of you will know all that. But right now, we're at a peak where there is more consciousness now than there has ever been. Now, at this point, somebody jumps in and says, well, what about Atlantis? Yeah, Atlantis was pretty cool. And Atlantis had very unique levels of consciousness, nothing like what you've got right now. Lemuria, when Lemuria occurred, Lemuria did not have physical bodies as you would understand them. Very airy, very loose configuration of consciousness in physical form, but not in the nature of physical form you would know. Many different aspects of consciousness and knowledge have been on the earth off and on for a long time. But right now, this is the highest level of consciousness that the earth has been able to hold in a configuration of consciousness in a third, fourth dimensional reality. Now, on one hand, that's a little scary when you look out into the political world these days and you see all the things that people are saying about well-being and beauty, and a little questionable, but that's the transition. So what is happening to you, though? I mean, you are the ones that are waking up. I'm the waking up. We're all waking up, but really not everybody is waking up and stepping into the level of question and consciousness that you are. Everybody on the planet is waking up. Everybody on the planet knows something is out of balance. They're waking up into what has been for a long time, the state of out of balanceness. They're also waking up into places where things like domination and greed, competition, advantage, those words don't feel very good, and they don't produce a result unless there's enough unconsciousness where those who can wield those states of being, you know, he who has the gold, rules, whatever that statement is. But right here, there's something happening, and to a great extent, it's happening to you. And it's happening to a handful. And when I say a handful, I'm really talking about a couple million beings, a handful. With 7 billion people on the planet, a couple million beings is a very small amount. Now, it scales. Some are waking up and having a large awareness. Others are waking up and stepping into awareness. But there is a mechanicalness to this whole process of having a body, becoming more conscious, drawing in more information, becoming more conscious, beginning to have an understanding of how to create a different environment. And that environment happens not so much in the rational mind that we use to think right now. So let me see if I can create in the next few minutes a kind of an awareness of what you are going to experience. Now, first time I told you something that is my truth. You are going to experience this. So, but don't believe me. Just listen, put it on the side. So what is unfolding right now is we have a level of conscious awareness We mostly process that conscious awareness through what some people would call the brain. It's the processing unit, chakra system, processing units. And this level of consciousness we have is really pretty limited. And we only know what we know, and we don't know what we don't know, and we take what we know and we try to make what we don't know work with it. And we give the rational mind a tremendous amount of responsibility to keep me safe, have me fit in, make me money, make sure people like me, all those kind of things. We give that responsibility to the rational mind. Over many eons of time, two of the things the rational mind structure has come to be really clear about is what you ask it. Keep me safe, think back at history, and have me fit in. Have me fit in. Have me have companionship, have me have community, have me be liked, have me fit in. So to a very large extent, the rational mind's purpose is exactly that. Keep you safe and have you fit in. But we're part of that challenge. Well, let me say it this way. It's worked really pretty well for the most part. It's gotten you here. It has been a little clumsy because one of the things we stopped paying attention to was that internal guidance system I mentioned. And we began to expect the external world to take care of me, or the external world to give me the right answers, or the external world to allow me to move around in a way that I'm going to be happy in the external world. But the rational mind heard all that, and its function is to keep you safe and have you fit in. Now the challenge is, what if I don't want to fit in? Well, in fact, many of you have had some really uncomfortable experiences out in that world trying to fit in, because you would tell a joke and then they didn't laugh with you, they laughed at you. Or you did something and everybody else said how clumsy you are and you were embarrassed. Or you got called on in geometry and you didn't know the answer and everybody laughed. And to many of us, I say that couple million people, we are very, very sensitive. Sensitive to emotions, sensitive to thoughts, sensitive to energy flows, very sensitive. And when we get laughed at or embarrassed or told we don't fit in, we have a tendency to withdraw. Any of you know what I'm talking about? Any of you hiders? Any of you just happy with your little box because you don't really want to go out there because I don't like that bigger box? So here are many of these really spiritual people waking up, you, me, many others, and we have not had such great experiences necessarily out there in that external world. And many great capacities we have to express brilliance and genius and excitement, artistry, really fun opportunities, they don't make it out there into that world out there because I didn't like what happened to me when I was growing up. So take a breath. We're beginning to change the energy right now. Do you know what I'm talking about? So one of the things that's happening is, and this plays into Mastering Alchemy to a great extent, and the question I ask often, what if you could create a different platform, a different vibrational field to be safe and to experience yourself, begin to know yourself, that was not contingent on the rational mind and or the external world? What if you could do something that allowed you just to not remove yourself from the world, but just kind of not be kind of in that world, and at the same time find a place of well-being that allowed you to start to know yourself from that internal guidance system, as well as a larger configuration of yourself that you've never had a chance to play with? What if you could do that? So here's what I want to tell you. Let me use the example of computers and softwares, because you have a sense of computers and softwares. Let me just call each of us a computer and a software system, not meaning to be insulting, but that's exactly what we are in a most advanced, wonderful way. And in that processor of the hardware and the software, there also is a consciousness. And that consciousness, when it uses, for instance, that internal guidance system, begins to have a sense of navigating through that external world in a manner that, from that platform, allows for more certainty, a more sense of being capable, a sense of being happy and curious, having a calmness, being able to choose to engage or not engage. Wouldn't that be really wonderful? I can be all of that, and nobody's going to yell at me, beat me up, embarrass me. So as you begin to play, and as you begin to ask that question, and all of you are stepping out of that third-dimensional world into this space where that internal guidance system begins to be very valuable. It just simply says, should I do this or should I do that? And the answer is kind of a yes or no. And for the most part, the answer is very, very accurate. Sometimes it says, yes, go do this, and it doesn't quite work out the way you want it, but the mere fact that you did it opened up a whole new set of doors that you don't necessarily recognize at the beginning. But that internal guidance system is very, very correct. So you as a computer, you as a really kind of broken computer, I say broken because you know about the 7 chakras. Those lower 3 chakras are all about physicalness, being a consciousness in a physical body with the capacity to create something new in form. 4th chakra has kind of 2 functions. One relates to the physicalness and one relates to the non-physicalness. And so that 5th chakra, 6th chakra, 7th chakra play out in terms of kind of non-physical things in a way, communication in the 5th chakra, 6th chakra being able to perceive and see and many things besides clairvoyance. 7th chakra really has a capacity to access a much greater facility of consciousness, but mostly is shut down. So if I go back to those lower 3 chakras, it is really amazing that they work as well as they do. They are fragmented, they are shattered, they are shut down, they are insulted, they don't work really well, but they work well enough to get you through your day. So one of the things that as you begin to build a sense of well-being, you start to look at yourself. One of the things that happens as you begin to step into those platforms of well-being, looking at taking care of yourself, there begins to be some opportunities to improve the hardware. Now, one of the very first things that, and one of the most significant things that will ever happen to you, me telling you something, put it on the side, don't believe me, is there is a rearrangement of how the chakra systems work. There's still 7 chakras, but they get rearranged. And we'll touch on this. Those of you who know what I'm talking about, we will play with it in a few minutes if I get my story complete. But basically there is a reorganization of how they integrate and operate with one another. So, but it happens in the upper sets of chakras. So the first lower 3 chakras, they kind of stay the same for this part of the discussion. But the upper chakras change, and they kind of form a different relationship. Piece of information, 4th chakra, 5th chakra, and the thymus center, which is a gland in the chest, they all begin to operate as a unit. Now, they operate individually. They still do what they're designed to do. But once they operate as a unit, there is a tremendous expansion of opportunity as to awareness of consciousness that comes about. It's in that first triad that aspects of the Sacred Heart begin to be made available. They're not available. You can't access aspects of consciousness with the broken 7-chakra body, physical, mental, emotional system. Hasn't happened yet. It's in the process of happening. Second triad, another triad, gets created by a relationship between the 6th chakra, the pineal center, and a portion of the brain called the medulla oblongata. Hugely important part of the brain, although it's kind of asleep right now. And so those 3 centers start operating as a unit. Again, a tremendous expansion of consciousness becomes available. Then 3 more aspects. The 8th chakra, the 9th chakra, and something called the soul star. Those 3 units of consciousness begin to operate as a function. And that opens up this non-physical aspect of all that is. The non-physicalness of consciousness begins to be accessible in very different ways than has been to each of us in the past. Those 3 centers, as you begin to create a level of light radiance in them, referred to as spinning, but it's like having a rheostat on the wall, and you just turn it up, and that center becomes brilliant in light particles. And as that process happens, there's a whole accessing to consciousness. So you've taken the physicalness, you've changed the hardware system, and you have now been able to start to draw from a level of software systems, expanding the software system. As you begin to play with these, this level of consciousness that becomes available to a great extent allows you to begin to see you as you. And so as you build that platform, you begin to look at many things that go on in the external world, and it gets very interesting. They are no longer of interest. Many of the things you thought, the things that people have said, much of that baggage that you've been given, you're not okay, you don't deserve, you're really not an attractive person, and I didn't like you anyway. Those were all other people's external opinions that got handed to you, and then you asked a really logical question, kind of silly, but logical. What's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? How come I'm not okay? Well, in this new expanded space, it's impossible to not be okay. I mean, you can wear a shirt that's 2 sizes too small and the wrong colors, or shoes that don't fit and you kind of look clunky. But it's really the same thing that happens when you walk around with you're not okay. You look clunky, and you're not smooth, and you're not articulate, and you don't like yourself as much. But as you begin to turn on this new hardware and expand the software, a great portion of that starts to fall away. Simply short circuits, not even a matter of therapy, just goes away. You don't even begin to remember it. You start functioning on a different vibrational frequency. There's numbers of things that you additionally do, and many of you playing in level 1 and all of Mastering Alchemy, one of the very first things you do, and we're going to play right here in a few minutes, is there is a line, a very fine, precise line of consciousness that runs from, we could call it heaven, all that is, source, creator, and it runs straight through those 9th chakra, 8th chakra, all right straight through all the chakras. It runs right through the center, right down to the center of the earth. It's a very small beam of light. It runs through something in the heart that's called the sanctuary of the pink diamond, an aspect of the sacred heart. It runs right through the flame that sits on the altar within the heart, the living light of the Creator, right down to the center of the earth. But when you start to have this awareness, the ability to open up that line, begin to expand it, make it wider, bigger, drawing more information, more consciousness into the body, all the hardware systems start to upgrade and more software systems start to come in. One of the hardware systems that you begin to build at the beginning, and everybody in level 1 knows this, is you simply create that octahedron around the body. As you begin to spin that and you begin to create 2 counter-rotating fields of light along with it, you open up these fields of consciousness into these, I don't want to quite say other dimensions or other realms, but higher levels of awareness. And you begin to function in a manner that allows you to more comfortably step onto that platform, begin to disengage with that external world, and that internal guidance system starts to come back into a present state of being, starts to become present. The ability to then listen or just know that this works, this doesn't work, begins to be the place where that internal guidance systems provide you the opportunity to choose. Is this a truth or is this a lie? Or is this a truth for that person, but that truth is not my truth? As that one function begins to happen, words, feelings, awareness is like certain, capable, quiet, gracious, senior in your space, this is who I am, all begin to be vibrational configurations of light that start to function as a living consciousness. You begin to know yourself as a conscious being in a physical body. Now there's a lot more to this as each one of those hardwares gets added, and then there's more software. There's things that are referred to as the Eye of Horus. There's something that as you get way into this, the brain begins to turn on. The neurons in the messaging system in the brain get altered by you. They begin to change the chemical balance in the body, the fluids, the hormones, the secretions, the chemicals, all are upgraded. How you begin to think is very different than how you once upon a time thought. It's called evolution. Some people call it ascension. It is, but it's your evolution. So all of that happens plus much more. But now let's see what we can do now that the energy has just been put in place. For those of you who know about triads, play with the triads as we walk through it. For anybody who doesn't know about the triads, no big deal. You're not missing anything. You're going to be sitting right in the energy. But we're going to simply play with that single line and see what happens as we kind of adjust it. So if you take a breath and sit back like yourself, there's a point where those lower 3, 4 chakras also get completely rearranged. There's a particular session in Mastering Alchemy where you call in Michael, Gabriel, Kathumi, and rearrange those chakras to become functioning entities of consciousness and light. So take another breath. Now, would you just notice yourself? If you're thinking about any of those things I said, just put them on the side, and would you notice yourself? And if your brain's thinking, just stop thinking. Just simply be quiet. And be aware of the breath. And then would you just notice yourself? Now, in my skill set, all I've been doing is setting energetic configurations before you, and we're going to just play with them. So one of the things that happens is this line of light. It's drawn from source. We could call it heaven. It comes right down through the center of the chakras. It comes right down through the center of that sacred heart. It runs right down through the center of the lower 3 chakras, runs right through the center of your grounding cord, and it runs right into the center of the heart of the earth, completing the connection between heaven and earth. Another breath. We're not creating it as yet. I'm just pointing to it. Now, would you be aware of your first chakra? Right at the tip of the spine, lower end of the spine. And would you give a command, a direction? Would you tell the first chakra to close down to 10% open? Just take a breath, and it just feels like it winds down. If you'll allow it, just relax into your body. No need to go unconscious with any of this. Just kind of be curious. And then just notice what happened. This is, again, the place where you don't believe somebody's story. You get to see if it's correct for you. Just notice what's happening. Are you getting quieter? Let the first chakra, it kind of spins down. It just kind of, it's like turning the rheostat on the wall again, just turning it down. The light gets dimmer. And would you say hello to the second chakra? About 2 fingers under the belly button, back against the spine. And would you give the second chakra the command to also turn down to 10% open? Now, if you're all wound up in emotions, and you give more seniority to the motion, the second chakra will stay right where it is. But if you can bring your attention to the second chakra and kind of be curious and not within the emotions or holding your attention on your day, that second chakra just smoothly closes down to 10% open. Still very functional. And then would you be aware of the third chakra? If you have a male body, would you give the command to that third chakra to turn down to about 25% open? Now, if you want, you can create a little gauge, like a thermometer or a little needle gauge, and just kind of watch it smooth down, close down to 25% open. If you have a female body, would you give the third chakra the command to close down to 75% open? 75. Now, the reason that there's a difference is because a female body does something different than male bodies do. In order to produce a form in form, as a living, spiritual, conscious being in a physical form, producing another form, as in a child, there are many more energy centers in a female body than in a male body. And so for that purpose, we're not shutting everything down or just turning it down a little bit, 75%. Take a breath. Then would you be aware of that heart center? And would you be aware of the fourth chakra, kind of right under the sternum, the breastbone, fifth chakra, and that soft spot in the throat? And more or less in between is the thymus gland and the thymus center. Now, if you think about that as a ball, three centers, but as they begin to function, that energy field becomes a sphere of light. And so very simple, would you spin that fourth chakra? Just give it the command to spin, and let it get a little brighter. It begins to brighten up. And then would you just be aware of that fifth chakra in the throat and just give the command to spin and let it get brighter. Just kind of see it as a light brightening up. And as that's beginning to brighten up, that thymus center is a gland, and it just also begins to have a vibrational field. It begins to spin, and the whole sphere just begins to get brighter as a sphere, as a unit. Now, there's not a lot of feeling here. It's not like an excitement or a lot of motion. It's very quiet. Let the body just continue to relax. Everything's beginning to vibrate in a resonance, a harmonic balance. Just another breath. And then would you bring your attention kind of into the center of your head, right behind your eyes? Would you be aware of yourself there? And the sixth chakra, right in the forehead, would you give it the command to spin? And it too just begins to be bright. Now don't think bright and don't wish it to be bright because that's what I said it would be. Just kind of allow it. You may see it get bright. You may see colors. You may see nothing. All is perfectly okay. No right answer. You might find a little pressure, not as a problem, just as a little bit of I'm noticing something. Then in the kind of center of the head, without trying to figure out where it is if you don't know, it's in the center of the head, pineal center. Would you just give the command to the pineal gland in that center to begin to spin, begin to be bright? Continue to breathe. And then that portion of the brain, it's just it's in the head. Just keep it simple. Medulla oblongata. You know exactly what it is and where it is, but maybe not intellectually, rational mind, but give it the command to spin. And that sphere of light creates in that portion of your head. Kind of fills the head. Now, there is a third triad. I actually gave you an incorrect piece of information a moment ago, but it consists of the 7th chakra, the 8th chakra, and the soul star, not the 9th chakra, as I said a moment ago. So would you be aware of the top of your head, the 7th chakra, and would you give that the command to spin, and it just begins to create a brightness. And it starts to be in resonance with the other 2 triads. You're creating a new space. You're putting aspects of hardware into alignment. 7th chakra. Then bring your attention to a place, let's say 8 to 12 inches, what is that, 20 to 30 centimeters, above the head, 8th chakra. And just give it the command to spin also. And it begins to be very much in alignment with the 7th chakra, and it begins to be bright also. Then above the 8th chakra, and actually a little bit to your left, it's not in a straight line with the chakras, soul star, the aspect of where you and the soul begin to have a relationship. So it just spin that soul star, just as if it's a point of light, and just spinning it, just slightly off center, but to the left. And as that spins, that 3rd triad, it's called triad meaning 3, not in a triangle necessarily, but in 3 points. And that 3rd triad begins to be very bright. And as that 1st triad vibrates, the 2nd goes into a harmonic resonance with it. They both vibrate identically. And the 3rd triad goes into resonance with the first 2. And they're all vibrating at exactly the same resonance of light. Now there's that one singular beam of light, very quiet, very precise. It moves from all that is, from source, creator, God, whatever you call that, consciousness. And right here, it's being generated within this 3rd triad. This is a massive complexity of software and hardware and all kinds of things. But what I'd like you to do is, would you say hello to Source, to Creator? And that light will be generated within that 3rd triad. Very pure light, many times referred to as undifferentiated light, pure light. Until you ask it to do something. And right here, would you have an intention to know yourself? An intention to know your truth for you. You knowing yourself. And that creation at that next level of you knowing yourself, right here, that's available because the hardware and the software are upgraded. Would you see that in as a kind of a point of light, and would you draw it from that third triad down into the second triad? It just moves through that soul star, 8th chakra, 7th chakra, and then just draw it into the second triad. And notice. It moves through that beam of light, but it also expands, turning on aspects of that second triad, turning on aspects of the third triad. And as that second triad begins to absorb this light, would you draw it from the second triad down into the first triad? Flows into the 5th chakra, the thymus center, the 4th chakra, the first triad as a unit of consciousness. And then would you direct it right through that channel, that beam of light, as it moves from that first triad? Would you draw it through the 3rd chakra as a single beam of light? And then continuing it into the 2nd chakra through that channel running through the 2nd chakra. And then into the 1st chakra. As this light passes through those lower 3 chakras, it begins to reconfigure portions of each of the chakras to become more conscious. Would you continue to draw it through that channel, which runs from the 1st chakra through the grounding cord, right into the heart of the earth, heaven and earth. as one. As it enters the heart of the earth, there is a reflection of light that is then amplified back through this channel, through the chakras, through the triads, into that third triad, into Source. Everything is one. And would you take another breath? And would you allow yourself, your truth? Would you allow yourself to know yourself in this light of Source? And as you take another couple of breaths, would you like yourself? Don't rush into loving yourself. That's kind of an advanced technique, But just like yourself. And a couple of breaths. And would you wiggle your toes? Would you have the lower three chakras turn back on just by telling them? Another breath. Just stay right in the energy, like yourself. You could even experience or experiment with pleased with myself. That's an advanced tool also, but it works sometimes too. Pleased with myself, like myself. Maybe even be happy. Kind of wiggle your toes. Notice what you notice. Beginning to be conscious of being conscious allows you to start to turn on these hardware aspects of yourself. It draws in many configurations of consciousness, the software that allows you to function very differently than your third-dimensional everyday life. A couple more breaths.